for this year, a little bit different for me at least, was to try and do something with actual on-pitch data, rather than just describing and visualising. See as a challenge if I could do something around what we should do, rather than just describing what happens. So hopefully, and having just seen Gary's really good presentation, I think I might have some bits that answer a few of the questions that you guys were asking, so I can see why Ryan's run them back to back. But jumping in, just wanted to show you a little video. So we're talking about optimising the location of attempts on goal. So where do we want to shoot from is really the theme of the presentation. And just after Ryan emailed saying, please put the presentation together, watching Everton Arsenal just before Christmas, it was just a couple of days after, and he got, Ross Barkley got a little bit jumped on by the blogging community, at least on Twitter, for doing this. So we'll just watch it through and see what he did. There you go. So it's one of those, we'll let it play through, but sort of all I was so close moments. But why he got jumped on was, you can see as he picks up the ball, he's pushed himself very wide and then shot from a fair way out, fair wide angle. So anyone who's familiar with expected goals can see where this is going. That we know there's a pretty low probability of scoring from there, and I think Koeman does as well based on expected. So we're going for an expected goals model, and I'll describe it briefly, but most of you, I guess, will be familiar with this concept. So if we take 10,500 shot attempts across 2.5 seasons, and we quantify what's your chances of scoring, and this is there's variations on how complex these models get. This is a fairly simple expected goals model, just based on distance and angle. So the wider you are from the goal, the less chance you are to score, because the less goal you've got to aim at as you go wide, and the further you are out, you've also got less to aim at, and the distance increases. So you vary from kind of 2% from a long way out, one shot and 50 will go in, up to 60-70% right on the goal line will go in. So hopefully that's not too controversial. It's fairly well established over the last couple of years now that this is conversion rates broadly from different positions. What I was proposing as a presentation for today is that I've always found that a little bit unsatisfactory, because the obvious implication of that picture is get closer to the goal before you shoot. And you go, well, thank you, Einstein. The analysts have put that across, but what am I going to do with that? How easy is it to get close? How close should I be before I try and release the shot? In different situations, and also as averages. So can we make some general rules about, based on where I am, what's the best thing to do? Do I shoot from here? Do I move a little bit closer once I'm inside the kind of 13% zone? Is that enough? Am I still trying to get closer and closer and closer before I shoot? What can I do? So that was the idea, to try and put something together that allows us to say, in different situations, how close do you want to be, and how close is close enough, basically. So we need a second model to be able to do that. So we've got the expected goals model, which is a straightforward, for the statisticians, binomial regression. So 1, 0, the goal was scored, the goal wasn't scored, explained by distance and angle of shot. The passing model that we need to say, can I get close? You can't do quite such a straightforward linear regression, basically, because there's all sorts of different effects going on all over the pitch. So longer passes, you could say a longer pass gets more difficult, fine, but a longer cross-field ball is easier. So a short pass through the middle of the pitch is difficult, a short pass wide is easy. Any pass into the area is difficult, any pass into the 6-yard box is really, really difficult. So you need a model that can handle all these different effects. So we use a random forest. I should say the picture on the right isn't my model, it's just a picture illustrating what a random forest does. So rather than being a straightforward model of saying longer passes are more difficult, it allows it to say, it kind of splits the data any way it wants and allows it to say longer passes are more difficult under these situations. So maybe a long crossfield ball is easy, and you go down one of these sort of segmented trees for long crossfield ball. Long ball into the 6-yard box, very unlikely to be completed, and it lets the model split the data any way that it needs to explain those effects, basically. And what I've got in the model is pretty simple again in terms of input variables. So I've got the XY for where the ball came from, I've got the XY for where it went to, I've got the distance the ball travelled and the distance forward the ball travelled. So it allows the model to pick up that forward passes may be more difficult, split longer and shorter passes any way that it wants to. And I should say, in the original proposal, and actually when I started out, I didn't have origin in the model. So I was just going to say which areas of the pitch are more difficult to reach. And then as I got into the later stages of the project, I started to go, well, this is really, really hard to apply, because I'm looking at a picture of the pitch that says how hard is it to get into different areas. But I can't do anything with it unless I know where the player is who's currently got the ball. It's just not really applicable. So I ended up building something a little bit more complex that could say from here to there. So this is what that looks like. We'll get into some visualization. So what we're looking at here is 3 pass origins, one from deep as a cross, one from further forward as a cross, and one from right in front of the penalty area inside the D. And it's plotting out the redder areas are easier passes, so it's a heat map. Red is easier, blue is colder, more difficult. How likely are you to complete a pass from the origin into any of these locations? And that's what the random forest is allowing us to do. So you can see some basic sensible patterns emerge straight away. That it's very difficult to pass into the 6-yard box. Great, we'd expect it to do that. And then there's some more subtle stuff. It's easier to pass backwards. Great. It's easier to pass to the wings. You can pick up in general. So picking the models one at a time. So you can see on the left-hand one, so a deep cross, or at least a cross from deep. You can see there's a line drawn across, and I haven't defined this, the model's defined it. There's a line drawn across at the level of the player to say anything further forward than the player is more difficult than backwards. Great. On the second one, where you're much further forwards, you can immediately see balls into the box are still difficult, but they're less difficult than they were from way back there, so that's great, that makes sense. And now cross-field balls become difficult, so once you really advanced up the pitch, a cross-field pass to the other side becomes difficult, and again, that fits with the sort of thing we'd expect. A pass back up the wing you're already on is quite easy, and again, you might expect that. And then finally, on the right-hand side, when you're right centre of the pitch, it's difficult to go straight backwards, staying in the middle of the pitch. Again, makes sense. It's easier to go backwards and wide, and it's a little bit easier to penetrate the area from there, but again, very, very difficult to penetrate the 6-yard box. So this model seems to make sense. It's picked up a good pattern, and is now allowing us to say from anywhere in the opposition half, pick a point, and the model will describe how difficult it is to get to any other point in the opposition half, on average, under general circumstances. So again, Gary mentioned things like counter-attacks. That's maybe something for the future. At the moment, we're just averaging all passes the same. Here we go. So the next step, we want to combine those two models. So we take the passing model, how difficult is it to reach an area from wherever you are. We take the expected goals model. If that pass is available, what's the chances of scoring if you complete it and immediately shoot? And that gives us the picture on the right-hand side. So this is now from that location. If I manage to achieve a pass, and this is all if a pass is available, which is really, really important to keep in mind. So that pass may not be available, but as advice for the team, it's a pass you would like to make available because it's an effective one. And you can see an effect that comes out immediately. The model says, actually, you probably don't want to go straight down the middle from that position because your chances of completing the pass are lower. Whereas if you come a little bit sideways, your chances of, even though your shot chance is going to be lower when you get there, because you're not quite so central, the pass completion outweighs the fact that the shot conversion has dropped off. And it's actually saying you want to come a little bit to the left or right from that position. And this varies completely from anywhere on the pitch. So you can pick up different points. So as an application of that model, and I think this works better as a kind of average application than picking out individual moments in games. I just wanted to show you what that would have to say about the Barkley clip that we watched. So there's Barkley, and I've rolled it back a little bit. So Barkley took the ball forward to the edge of the box and then shot from here. But he's got McCarthy and Valencia making runs forwards, and as I say, this is general, so we can argue in this particular case about whether he can hit them. But let's play it through anyway. So what he actually did, we map up his options. What he actually did was take the ball on and shoot. There's something I want to mention here. So this is the final, where does the model want you to pass to and then shoot optimally. There's quite a strange effect comes through here, which I was a bit worried about for a few days until I worked out what was going on. The model says the best single thing that Barkley can do from there is pass right at the far post on the goal line. And I kind of went, oh, that's not right. That can't possibly be right. But I think the model is telling us something valuable. If you had a player there, and he wasn't offside, that would be a brilliant idea. But this model doesn't know about offside. So there's kind of an extra layer as a next stage that might be good to bring in. I'll talk a bit more about that in a bit. But it can still map out the options that you can hit. What would they do, barring offside? So he went on and shot. Based purely on the expected goals model, there's about a 2% chance of scoring from there, near enough. Unlikely, 1 in 50, it's probably not coming in. He could try to come inside central to McCarthy. The model actually thinks that's a reasonably likely pass. So 80-ish%, because it's a square ball, it's not going forwards, it's a reasonably short ball, there's a reasonable chance of completing that. So that gives you an 8%, times a much better shot. So rather than 2%, it's now a 5% shot, because it's much more central, even though it's still a long way out. Gives you 4.5%, so you've doubled your chance of scoring if you can achieve that pass. Or try and hit Valencia. Much more difficult pass, less than 1 in 3 of achieving that pass. But the shot percent is way higher, 14%, if you do manage to complete it. And it actually comes out kind of much of a muchness, those two options. So it's statistically slightly better, but you probably wouldn't want to rely on 0.5% here or there and this sort of model. Broadly, about the same. Trying to hit a difficult run or trying to move it central and shoot from there. Another real example, that this one just stuck out for me as quite fun, actually. So these are images that I quite often stick up on Twitter, and I'll do them for all the teams in the Premier League. So at the top, you're looking where do West Brom's balls into the box come from? And the orange shaded area, the darker it is, more balls into the box. So whenever I put these out for every team in the Premier League, everyone immediately jumps on West Brom and goes, look at Tony Pulis, that's incredible. Everything that West Brom play into the box virtually comes off the shoulder of the penalty area on the diagonal, everything. And then people have pointed out before, it's so that you can't get counter-attacked. This model hasn't got very much to say about that, so where you choose to play the ball from isn't something this model can really tell you. It can say, based on you're already here, you've chosen to cross, where you're going to try and put it. So we've got balls coming from there, and then their shots in blue come from an area just outside the 6-yard box in central. West Brom don't shoot from anywhere else, pretty much. There's a few from outside, but very few. And what does the model think you should do from that orange position? It thinks you should hit a point just outside the 6-yard box. It's almost spot on as a strategy. May not be the prettiest strategy, but it's a very effective one, and we can quantify that, which I think is an interesting thing to be able to do. And you can, as I say, do this from any other area of the pitch. So then the final thing I really wanted to do, and this was the crux of the proposal actually, was does this area change? So I've done averages up to now. If we bring in a team with worse passing, does the optimal area to try and hit change? And again, initially I was a little bit worried that the model said, not really. And it's thanks actually to Rory Campbell at West Ham who took a look at this and pointed out that actually the optimal area not changing, is quite a good thing. It means we have general rules rather than rules that you have to get very specific about for each club. But what we're looking at here is Sunderland on the left, so picked as over the last couple of seasons, more struggling Premier League side versus Man City. I'm trying to be polite. Man City, very high quality passing team. So final third passing about 10 percentage points. Man City 84%, Sunderland about 74% over the last couple of seasons. But you see the basic shape of these models is the same. So this is chance of completing a pass from, again, the Barkley position, just for the sake of argument. Chance of completing a pass, broadly similar. And when we say optimal area, I'm going to blank out the 6-yard box for the minute just because of the offside problem that we don't really care. We know that ball's almost certainly not available. The map of where you would ideally like to play that pass to doesn't really change. So it's hotter for Man City. They've got more chance of completing the pass. They've got more chance of scoring from that move, which again makes sense to us. But in terms of what you should try to do, you actually, when you manipulate the model, you have to make a team truly awful before that becomes a bad idea. You basically have to say they've got no chance of completing the ball into the penalty area, and then you'll say, well, fine, shoot. But broadly, you get the same area for each team. So on within a league, broadly matched teams, you will get the same areas, which, as I say, Rory from West Ham took a look at this and pointed out was potentially a good thing, which was good. The last step I wanted to take, and actually speaks to David's question at the end of the last one, is should you pass or shoot is the other thing we can do with this model. So everything so far has been, given that you're going to pass, which area of the pitch do you want to try and hit? We can also say, should you shoot from where you are, or should you try to pass? And again, this is, should you try to pass if a pass is available, and where should a team try to make passes available? So if there's no pass available, great shoot. The model doesn't really talk about that. So on the left, you've got the average team in the Premier League. And what I've done is, there's 25 million combinations of passes you could make within the opposition half. So the model's assessing all of those and saying, from every point on the pitch, do I shoot from here, or is there a better pass potentially available that we could hit? So that could be passes to different locations, but is there a better pass available than shooting right now? The red area is there is very unlikely to be a better pass available than shooting right now. So that's your key area for the average team. Is in front of the 6-yard box, just extending out to the edge of the area is your key zone, where once you are within that, shoot. If you're not within that, the team wants to be trying to create passes to within that before they shoot. And then I was describing what happens if you make the team much poorer at passing. Leave the shoot, it's a strong assumption, leave the shot quality where it is, just make them poorer at passing, which I appreciate is fairly unlikely to happen. How much does that area change? And the answer is not much. So that's a team passing about 80% in the final third. The right-hand side is a team passing at 64% accuracy in the final third, so dreadful. No one's that bad in the Premier League over a decent period. And the area only changes to extend out to about the edge of the D. It doesn't change very much at all. So what it's saying is this optimal expected goal shot zone stays about where it is, actually. And it's much more about the runs you can make on what's possible, rather than actually where I came into this analysis initially, expecting some form of it to say, well, if you're a poorer passing team, shooting from range makes more sense. Actually, the analysis is saying, well, no, not really. A little bit further, a couple of yards further, yeah, but not an awful lot. So if you do think you're poorer, it's kind of out to the D. If you're not poorer, it's out to the edge of the area. And then finally, just further developments that potentially would be possible with the model. As Gary said, one of the things I'd love to do with this model is segment it, split it between fast breaks, slower build-ups, that sort of thing, see how pass surface changes. Haven't done that yet. Passing changes and multiple passes. So I'm assuming at the moment one pass prior to shot. What if it's 3, 4? How many passes have you got in the bank before your shooting would have been a better idea? And then finally the offside thing. So the only way I can think that we could potentially start modelling that is getting track app player location data and saying what runs are possible. So at the moment it's assuming there's a player there, you'd quite like to hit them, but the model can't say there definitely won't be a player there because he'd be offside. Track app data could potentially do that. And that's it. Does anybody have any questions?